Guten Morgen nach Österreich, guten Nachmittag an alle, die von China aus zusehen. Herzlich willkommen zu unserem interaktiven Webinar zum Thema erfolgreiche Online-Kampagnen in China. Mein Name ist Lisa Kronreif, ich bin die stellvertretende Wirtschaftsdelegierte hier am Außenwirtschaftscenter Shanghai und ich freue mich, dass Sie sich heute zugeschaltet haben. Es geht, wie der Titel bereits sagt, um Online-Marketing in China und das in einem Land, das es so gut wie keine westlichen Medienplattformen oder Websites verfügbar sind wie bei uns in Europa. China ist der größte Medienmarkt der Welt und hat mit über 900 Millionen Usern auch die weltweit größte Internet-Community, sowohl auch die aktivste Smartphone- und Online-Mediennutzer. Wie kann man also als ausländisches Unternehmen auf chinesischen Online-Medien punkten? Hier heißt es, die modernen chinesischen Medien sowie Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent verstehen zu lernen und auch Ihr Unternehmen Social Media fit zu machen. Das wollen wir erreichen und dabei wollen wir Ihnen helfen. Ein Start dazu ist dieses Webinar. Nun möchte ich Ihnen auch gleich unsere Sprecher vorstellen. Den Hauptvortrag wird Alexander Schulz hier neben mir halten. Alexander ist Däne, spricht zwar perfekt Deutsch, aber dennoch ist Englisch für das Webinar eine angenehmere Sprache. Deswegen werde ich jetzt auf Englisch weiter moderieren. First of all, thank you very much, Alexander, for joining us for this webinar. Just to introduce our audience a little bit to your background. Alexander, you were working for many years for Denmark's Ministry of Foreign Affairs before you eventually decided in 2013 to start your own business, Shanghai Jungle. The company is based in Shanghai and it's focused on helping Western companies with their marketing in China. You have a multinational team. 2 of your team members are with us here today in the background. And currently, your company serves more than 100 clients in 11 countries. Thank you so much for coming here and sharing your insights with us. Who you also see on the right-hand side of the screen is my colleague Fabian Gems from our office in Guangzhou. Fabian is the head of our office in Guangzhou, and our office in Guangzhou has, amongst many focuses, one focus on electronics, appliances, and mobile devices, which is also one reason why Fabian is joining us today, because actually many of China's tech companies are located in the south of the country, such as Tencent, which is the developer of WeChat, so a big focus here on this webinar today. So thank you very much, Fabian, also in advance for sharing your insights on this matter. Before we start the webinar, though, I want to get to know you as an audience a little better, which is why we prepared a set of questions for you, 3 in total, and we would like to ask you for a little bit of your background. So we're starting out with the first question. I'm seeing it on the screen. You should now too. Do you personally have an active WeChat account? Please select yes or no. Should be a simple question. Just click and we should get in the results very soon. So do you have a personal active WeChat account? Yes or no? Please click on the screen. And we're getting the results right now, actually. Most of our audience today, or it's actually half, have no account on WeChat. So great that we're doing this webinar then. We're moving on to the second question already. It goes a little bit more into detail. What experience does your company have with WeChat at present? Do you have option 1, none at all? You're just here for a first introduction. You would like to do something, but you're unsure how. You're already on WeChat, you have an account, but you use it very little. Or option number 4, you have a WeChat account and you are quite active. So which one of the 4 characterizes you the best? Actually, we do, that actually reflects our first question also to some extent. Most of the people, so 38% actually have not a WeChat account at the moment, and this is a first introduction. All right, moving on to the third question, which is a multiple choice question. So in this case, you can select more than just one answer. Which part of online marketing in China are you most interested in? As you know, this is a good mix of different online marketing channels in China. So which channel are you most interested in? Is it WeChat, Weibo? Weibo is more or less Twitter in Chinese version. Is it Douyin? a very popular video channel similar to Snapchat in China? Or is it Sohu and Baidu Tieba? Or Youku, which is the Chinese YouTube? You can select more than just one answer for this question. Okay, so many of you, 92%, are really interested in WeChat, and we also have Weibo is also with 44%, very interested, our audience, and also Youku is pretty interesting to you as an audience. Thank you very much. This helped us already a lot to understand you better, and also for our speakers to prepare. Before we start the webinar, just some important organizational details which I'd like to share with you and walk you through briefly. The webinar will last for 1 hour. First, my colleague Fabian Gems in Guangzhou will introduce you briefly to WeChat, the development and why it's such an essential tool. Afterwards, Alexander will walk us through the nitty-gritty details of some online marketing tools, and also with a focus on WeChat, which is good because we saw in the audience there are a lot of people who want to know more about WeChat. And now one more important point during the webinar, you can and should, we encourage you to ask questions anytime. There's a chat window where you can ask questions at any time. At the last session, so 10 to 15 minutes before we stop the webinar, there will be a Q&A session where we will answer questions you raised during the webinar. So do make sure to ask questions. We do have a lot of participants in this webinar, so it might be that we cannot go through all the questions, but don't worry, we actually don't throw them away. They will be safe with us. We actually will contact you later via email and send you the answers to your questions individually. Now, if you arrived late to this webinar session, or if you want to forward the webinar to a friend or colleague, or if you simply want to watch it again yourself, we will make the webinar available on YouTube on our channel, and we will send you the link afterwards as well. You will also receive the PowerPoint presentation, so no need to take photos of the screen or take notes. Don't worry, we will send it to you later on via email. Last but not least, the internet connection in China can sometimes be a headache, so we kindly ask you for your understanding. If the connection is unstable, please wait a while and don't shut off your computer just yet. It will usually just take a few seconds for us to be back online. Same for the video connection. If you can't see us anymore, please don't stop the computer. You can still hear us, even though the live connection might be gone. But let's not hope for that. And without further ado, I actually would like to ask my colleague in Guangzhou, can you hear us and can you give us some input on WeChat, Fabian?
Thank you very much, Lisa, for the kind introduction. Yes, I can hear you clearly and well. Very happy to be here today with you, in particular also with Alexander from Shanghai Jungle, a very well-known company in this field. Let's take a step back. I think it's very important, as we said, you want to know more about WeChat. So my idea would be to give you an understanding of what we do, what we as Advantage Austria, also Wirtschaft Center Guangzhou did in the past, what is WeChat's focus, then some other questions which we get regularly regarding WeChat. Which account type is the right one? Do we really need to know Chinese? Do we need an agency? What about WeChat Pay in Austria, and what's next? So briefly, I will cover this. Our office has closer ties with WeChat headquarters, which is in Guangzhou, for about a year and a half, shortly after I arrived in southern China. We did not only publish guidelines for WeChat, which we will gladly share with you after we heard some more of your frequently asked questions afterwards with all of you, but we also enabled Austrian companies to have direct contact with WeChat regarding some matters, how to set up an official account, etc., etc. Furthermore, we brought Austrian companies for learning missions and workshops to WeChat over the last year and a half. Some results of that is that now in Austria we have WeChat Pay, and official accounts with an Austrian business license can be done. We'll talk about this later, and Alexander will go more into the details regarding that. What is WeChat's focus? If you look at all the speeches of the CEOs of the company, it's very clear. They want to improve the user's experience. So everything which can bring added value to the user, of which we have now more than 1 billion monthly active users, it is what they're interested in. An average daily usage time of 90 minutes means that you also have to be very focused on what you want to perceive. Another question which we always have, can we get in touch with WeChat directly? You don't have to. There's qualified agencies out there, which can help you setting up a good strategy, marketing strategy for you. Plus, there's an open development firm, open development platform. So if you need to dig into the nitties and the gritties of WeChat, you can do it yourself. Talking about which account type, which Chinese required agency necessary, let me just briefly say, it really depends on your needs. The first step is usually to set up an official account, a service account. With the next step will be a mini program. Alexander will touch upon that more deeply. But what is very important now, what I want to tell you, please find a trusted agency. We've found it time and time again that it's very difficult after you had maybe you trusted a local partner, maybe you trusted an agency who promised too much. It is very important that you find a good agency. They will not only help you easily setting up the accounts, but also will spare you from hassle afterwards with some legal implications. What about WeChat Pay in Austria? We heard Alipay is already in Austria for quite some time. WeChat Pay is always a little bit behind. They see first what is Alibaba doing. So now, beginning of January 2019, we heard officially from Wirecard that WeChat Pay is also available in Austria, which we are very happy about. What's next from our office? Together with the Shanghai office, we will actually have a learning mission heading into the future of digital ecosystems, beginning of June, for Austrian company CEOs from the tourism and hospitality sector. And also, of course, we will regularly update our guidelines to make it more visible to you. In order to better understand WeChat, you also have to understand the Chinese consumer. And let me touch upon two megatrends which are at the moment pushing WeChat in China and abroad. One of them is that Chinese consumers are digital consumers. If you look at those two graphs here, the speed of life in China pushes Chinese to be also swift and adapt with all that. They want to have it now, they want to have it within minutes, and they don't want to go to the store waiting line for a long time, except when it is for some retail sales that are on sale right now. Usually the day-to-day activities they want to do actively online, whether through Alipay or WeChat Pay. You see here the China mobile payment volume, as well as the retail e-commerce sales worldwide. That's one factor which is playing domestically in China regarding the development and the importance of WeChat. The second one is going abroad. If we compare it with 2018, we had 156 million overseas visits by Chinese. This is 15 times more than it was only 18 years ago. And what is very important for you to know in this regard is that those travelers, they like to consume as well. And they like to consume as they do at home. If you look at factors affecting Chinese tourists' overseas shopping decisions, at the number one we see here on the bottom is the supported payment methods, even overtaking reasons as product quality, price, discount, special offers. So those are two factors why you as a company should look into WeChat as a marketing tool, whether it's just for bringing out the message or also setting up a mini program and making it available to buy those products online. That's all time that I had now for the brief introduction, but I will remain with you during the time of this webinar. And of course, if there's anything that we can do from the Braunschweig office, let us know. Thank you. Back to you, Lisa.
Thank you very much, Fabian, for this very good introduction of WeChat. I think this actually set the base very well, and we're now ready to dig deeper into the WeChat matter and also touch upon some other important online marketing tools in China. Alexander, the stage is all yours. Thank you very much.
So, thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Fabian. And greetings from Shanghai, everyone. So, as Lisa mentioned, although I have a German name and understand most German I am actually from Denmark, and so please forgive that this seminar is conducted in English. I should though say before I begin that in our company we have a German colleague, so if you would like to contact us afterwards in German, that will be absolutely no problem, and we also respond in German, of course. So first here, an overview. The topic of today's seminar is WeChat, but I think more precisely it is how to do WeChat. And the experience we have in our agency is that a lot of Western companies today, they know about WeChat, they know the importance, they have heard it, they have perhaps even been to a seminar where it was described, the overall numbers, etc. But the question they are left with is, how do I actually get started? How do I actually do this? So that is what we will try to focus on today. It will be very practical in some sense, so I hope that is okay. First, and you can see here, first we talk a little bit about why WeChat, very briefly, then how. Then we will give you 2 examples from clients that we have assisted. We will talk a little bit about shopping and also some other channels. And then finally give you some advice on how to proceed. So just very briefly about our company. We are based in Shanghai. We believe it is crucial to be in China to be able to do marketing solutions for China. Of course, that can create the challenge of not being close on a daily basis to our clients who are outside China, but still we feel that being in China is the most important thing. We have staff from several European countries, and China of course, clients all over Europe, and also we have clients of every kind, both B2B companies, B2C companies, government organizations and agencies. So I think we service quite a broad range of companies. The one thing I will say at this stage is there are some things we are good at and there are other things we are not good at. And I say this kind of with pride almost, because in my experience, the one type of partner you have to be really skeptical about in China is the ones who say we can do it all. So in our company, we are good at marketing solutions centered around the online universe. We are not good at market research, for example, or company registrations or trademark registrations or things like this. We have other partners we can refer you to if you need, but that's it. So, and you can see here, quite importantly, and I'll get back to this later, we stress that we are not a WeChat agency, but an agency that does WeChat solutions. And why is that? It is because what we have found is that even if you manage to solve the challenges surrounding creating a good WeChat account and doing that really well, you still need to get people to find the WeChat account. And that is an altogether even bigger challenge. And to do so, it is important to think a little bit broader than just WeChat. We will tell you more about this shortly. So, yeah, you can see it here for yourself. I think what we like to try to do for our clients is to keep it simple, affordable, and to actually make it happen. So that's in our DNA, and that's who we like to see ourselves as. Okay, with those words, let's get on to the real thing. WeChat, as Fabian mentioned, now more than 1 billion users. But what does that actually mean? I think most Westerners who hear these numbers, you get a little bit speed blind. You think, yeah, okay, a lot of Chinese are on WeChat. Let me relate it to something that I understand. So, for example, many people will think maybe WeChat is a little bit like Facebook, or maybe it's a little bit like WhatsApp, which I think is quite popular. WeChat is used by all Chinese, young, old, middle-aged people. It's used in the big cities, in the countryside. literally everyone uses it, and that is why it is such an extremely powerful tool. It is where people communicate, it is where you do your shopping, or maybe not the shopping, but it is where you handle your payments. It is where you pay for the groceries, pay for the taxi, everything. So the essence here is, no matter what you think you can compare it to, there really is nothing to compare it to in the West. So I'll just say shortly about the history of WeChat, not because it's a history lesson, but because it's a little bit important for understanding why it has become so important now. So WeChat started out being WhatsApp, a messaging tool for free if you were online. That's how they built their user base. It was all good. Then 4 years ago, approximately, they started to introduce official accounts, which meant that you as a company could be present on WeChat. But still at that time, the functionalities that you could use as a company were quite limited. Then they introduced payment functions, booking functions, shopping functions. Especially payment and booking are extremely popular, and it has kind of exploded the importance of WeChat. What has happened the last year and a half is what makes it really relevant for you. It is that the functionalities available for public accounts has increased dramatically. We will show you some examples of this, but it means that today you can actually have a very professional and comprehensive presence in China online without even having a website, but just having your WeChat account. So I will show you about that now. So the question of how to do WeChat, really I would say it consists of 3 elements at the core. First is, of course, how do you register your account, your public account? We are only talking about company accounts now, of course. The second is, how do you create what we call the fixed content? And third, it is, how do you do the marketing and storytelling? So for the registration process, until recently, you had to use an agency such as ourselves that is a legal entity in China. If you had a legal entity here, you could also do it through that. But a company not having a legal entity in China could not register an official WeChat account. That has changed now. It is actually possible for you in Austria to register your WeChat account directly. It's not very complicated. It takes time. It's a little bureaucratic, but if you want to do that, you can go ahead and do it. So I certainly don't want to pretend that this is something you should not consider doing, although I will say that there are some things you should bear in mind before you do it that way. But fundamentally, what you have to do no matter what, and first of all, is you have to decide on what type of WeChat account you would like to have. What would be a good name for the WeChat account? As you probably know, a good Chinese name is not necessarily just a direct translation of your German name, and also there are some restrictions on what you can do with different types of names in order to get the verification. And finally, of course, creating the content. So for the account types, I hope you can see this slide, that it's not too small. What you need to know is that there are basically 2 different account types, something called a subscription account and something called a service account. Both of these account types can be verified and not verified. As a company, as a serious entity, you would want it to be verified so that people can see you really are a company. This really is the official account for whatever brand it may be. It's not complicated to get it verified, but it's a little bureaucratic. The key thing is to choose between the subscription account and the service account. I think this choice depends completely upon what your business is and what you would like to do. So it will not be appropriate for me to go into depth here. I will say, if any of you after this session would like to hear our specific proposal or thoughts for your situation, just send us an email and we will give you our thoughts on it. But fundamentally, you can say that if you don't post very frequently, so that is, if you want to post more than 4 times a month, then you need to have a subscription account. If you post less frequently, the service account is the better account. The drawback with the subscription account is that you don't get seen nearly as much as you do with the service account. It depends on how the news come up in your news feed, and I can show you shortly how the difference is. But just to say, of all our clients today, I think 95% they have a service account. So this is of course particularly important if you go ahead and register the account yourself, that one of the very first questions you will be asked in that process is, what type of account do you want? So please don't proceed beyond that point until you have thought carefully about it. Also because you cannot change afterwards from a service account to a subscription account. So just don't, if you're full of enthusiasm after this seminar and want to go ahead and just register, maybe hold the fire just for a day or two and get some input on what kind of account type you should choose for your business. So, as I mentioned, you can either go ahead and do it yourself. If you are an Austrian company, we have in the presentation, which you will receive from Lisa later, there are the relevant links directly to WeChat. It is all done in English, so fairly straightforward. What is not necessarily as straightforward is that you need to provide a little bit comprehensive company information in order to do this. So it is a little laborsome. It takes a little time to do it. So I'll just say that I cannot not recommend doing it this way, but you should, on the other hand, know that it is not something that is very easy to do. The alternative, of course, is to do it like you would have done previously with an agency such as ourselves. If you do that, typically we have a contract with you which says, of course, that you own the account. You can at any time transfer it or ask us to transfer it to another agency in China, etc. So it's not like you are stuck with us, or I assume other agencies will have the same. We will guide you with what type of account you should register and the name and these things. But to be frank, we would also very happily advise you on this if you just do it yourself. So it's not like it's a prerequisite for working with us, but just so you know. The price we normally charge for this is 450 euro per year, just as a reference point for you to know. The one thing, however, I really have to recommend that you don't do, like Fabian also touched upon, is to use your local Chinese partner, your agent or your distributor or an employee to register their account. I really don't have any good experiences with this. Sooner or later, the employee will move on to another job, or maybe for some reason you would like to work with other agents or whatever it is. And at that stage, they will own your presence in China. So this is a little bit comparable to your trademark. No matter what you do with the trademark, don't ever let your Chinese partner register your trademark. And the same thing goes for the account. You can have your Chinese partner do the marketing if you want, but make sure that somehow it is you, your company, who owns the WeChat account, whether it is through an agent such as us, agency, or whether it is directly yourself. Oops. So moving on, now you have registered the WeChat account. What do you then do? The first is to distinguish between two types of content. You need to create both in order to have a professional WeChat account. We call one part the fixed content and the other part the storytelling. The fixed content, as you can see from this screen, is a menu at the bottom of your official WeChat account. You don't have this menu on a personal account. That is what makes it an official account. So you can see here, we actually took this example from one of our clients, the Berliner Philharmoniker. And we have translated into English so that you can see what it is we do and not just see a lot of Chinese characters. But at the bottom here, you see that there is a main menu. And the main menu can consist of up to 3 different menu items. This again has a drop-up menu function, so that you can see it looks almost like a website with the menu, which will be your top bar on your website, and the drop-down menu on your website also. Here you can have up to 5 sub-menu items, so you can have 15 different categories. Until a year ago, that was it. This meant that you could tell some kind of story to your clients, and when they clicked one of these, it would open an article that would tell you something, whatever it was about your product range, etc. So you can say 15 articles. It's on the one hand, of course, something. On the other hand, it's much less than you will normally have on a website, for example. But what has happened recently, so a year and a half ago, is that WeChat introduced new and much more sophisticated menu structure. So as you see here at the top, you have the category name, and you can see there is a headline image. So it makes it visually much more appealing, of course. Underneath this, you have the categories. And the categories, you can have up to 4 categories. So I'll just go back and tell you this point you got only from looking at one submenu. If you click at one submenu, you get to a menu point like this. And here you can have up to 50 articles. So in total, you can have many articles here. So of course, all of a sudden, WeChat has become a viable alternative to having a website. The other type of content you create is your weekly storytelling. I say weekly because that's the frequency we use for most clients. But of course, it can also be a daily or it can be monthly. But no matter what, these are articles that are pushed directly to the user and they appear directly in the user's feed. So the reason I focus a little bit on the difference between these two, the fixed content on the one hand and the storytelling on the other hand, is it is completely different types of content you want to have these two places. The fixed content is for people who know about your brand, who follow you, who for some reason are interested in knowing more about it. So let's say it could be a tourist who's already decided that he's going to Vienna, and now he wants to know more about the specific museums, the opening hours, everything. Whereas the storytelling is something that people read while they're sitting on the metro in Shanghai. It has to be relevant for the Chinese user on a daily basis in Shanghai. Also extremely important is the article layout. You can see one example here. A WeChat article is completely different from an Instagram article or Facebook article in that it is a real article. It is not a picture with a text. It is a story. It has to be told as a story. That also means it has to be layouted so it's interesting and catchy. And you know already maybe that Chinese, they have a lot more bling bling and things going on their websites. It's a little bit the same with the WeChat. So what is important is to find a balance between telling a story so it is appealing, interesting, captivating for your Chinese user, while at the same time keeping your visual identity and DNA as a company. It maybe sounds very banal, but it can be a bit of a challenge to make sure that it doesn't go overboard and it doesn't get boring. So I've just introduced some examples here. And yeah, we normally say that the question you need to ask yourself before you post a story is this something people will want to read on a Thursday morning on the metro in Shanghai? And not to make it look like this. So this is one example from a client we took over. This is what it used to look like. You You can call it boring, old-fashioned, and uninspired. It's pretty much like reading Die Presse. So maybe not something that will catch on to the modern Chinese consumer. So the common challenges, just to sum it up, is that we face with many of our customers is that they lack stories because they're used to posting pictures with text. Here you have to make a real story. They lack visual content, lack of video, pictures. The postings are often irregular, and that really doesn't work. I think you need to settle on a frequency and then go with that frequency, whether it is every week, every second week, every month, every day. You have to do that. And I will not spend more time on this. So the harder challenge is, how do you actually get seen in this market space? Now you have registered the account, you have made the content is good, the WeChat account is beautiful, you can be happy and proud about it. No one is using it. Why? Because getting seen on WeChat is extremely difficult. It is almost impossible. It is extremely expensive to do marketing on WeChat itself. So in order to be seen, you need to be a little bit creative and a little bit smart. And that is why we as a company changed our focus from being a WeChat company to being an agency that does WeChat. So we normally say here, it's not difficult. It just requires you to do some smart thinking in the planning phase and then be persistent in the implementation. So I'll give you mainly one example, which is the Berliner Philharmoniker I mentioned before. The solution we have implemented for them, it consists of WeChat, Weibo, and other social media. I'll just walk you quickly through it. So on WeChat, as you can see, we have created an account. It's full of great content. This content basically comes from their website. They made an active decision not to have a website because all the content is here anyway. And also this is where the normal Chinese user will find you. So most Chinese users, Fabian touched upon it, they are mobile, it's hand devices usage, much more than desktop. We post for them regularly. We send them a proposal for a posting plans once every quarter. They approve it, they approve the stories, and we go. So very straightforward. Typically we write the story based on the content plan, we show it to them, they approve it, and we post. So I don't think this is unique to us. It can really be any agency you work with. But I have to say, my recommendation would be to probably work with an agency in China, because in my experience, understanding what is really moving, the different features that are available, you kind of have to be here in order to really see that on an ongoing basis. We also do Tieba. I don't want to tell you a lot about Tieba here, but what I will say is this is a blog, very popular. And these blogs exist for all kinds of topics. You can be a stamp collector, there will be one blog. You can be interested in rock music, another blog. In running shoes, a third blog. In hiking, a fourth blog. Also, there are of course blogs for people with an interest in classical music. So we work actively on Baidu Tieba to create content to lead people to the Berliner Philharmoniker's WeChat account and their Weibo account. Yeah, so you can see they also have a Weibo account. Until 2 years ago, I used to think that Weibo was on its way out. It was bypassed by WeChat. As Lisa mentioned, Weibo is kind of the Twitter of China. But it's fair to say that Weibo has had a strong, maybe not comeback, but resilience. People still use it a lot. It's much more fast-paced, dynamic. It's lots of stories every day. And the beautiful thing from a marketing perspective, it's two things. One is that this is a forum where you post a picture and a text. So extremely easy to operate. And that also means it's cheap. Or maybe I should say inexpensive. The other is that it is also quite inexpensive to push stories on Weibo. So for a very limited budget, let's say €1,000 a month, you can actually push quite a lot of stories to your target group, and that way get traction to your own accounts, both on Weibo and on WeChat. So Weibo is a quite inexpensive and very important tool to kind of supplement your WeChat strategy. Yeah, as I mentioned, you can push articles here, promote it. What we also do for the Berliner Philharmoniker is that we work in partnerships with some of the other Weibo accounts. So in this case, there are Weibo accounts dedicated to classical music. We have gotten some gift vouchers and other things from the Berliner Philharmoniker, which our partners, the other Weibo accounts, then use to promote our account. So of course there has to be something in it for them, but as long as there is that, there's really good opportunities. And here I'll say, in our experience as an agency, if you just come with a bag of money and say, can we work with you? They will say, yes, it costs this much, and it's always expensive. But if instead you come and say, we have something to offer you that's of interest, whether it is a hiking trip in the Alps or whether it is something else, they are normally more interested in cooperation and also very happy to engage in it. So, and for a much, much lower price. So I think a little bit the key lies in finding out what do you have to offer to relevant partners, and then approach them and get them to introduce you, your brand, your products, and your public accounts on WeChat and Weibo to their users. So that is really the essence of how we work. We also hand out materials at the concerts, etc. in this case. So it really is a comprehensive effort. But an important thing is not expensive at all. I have another short example I will mention, which is I took this because it's very different. It's a pure B2B case. Bakery Tech China is a group of Dutch bakery technology companies. It doesn't get much more B2B than this. They operate a joint WeChat account with information about the partners and their solutions, and they only target engineers and decision makers in Chinese companies who buy bakery equipment, industrial bakery equipment. So of course the purpose of this account is not to reach thousands and thousands of followers, but it is to say we have one place where we know we can communicate directly with our target group, the people who we are already engaged with. So instead of going to a fair, getting a business card, sending an email to them, which is probably never replied to in my experience, and kind of losing touch, instead they sign them up to the WeChat account on the spot, and from that moment on they can send them information. So just a special mention, I think maybe Lisa also touched upon this today, you can also open a shop on WeChat. It's not the most obvious place to have a shop in China. Maybe selling on Tmall or Taobao is better, but it's possible. It requires a lot of explanation to talk in more detail about this. So I think it's impossible to do today, but maybe we can do it at another seminar, or if you have a specific interest in this, send us an email and we will get back to you. Yeah, I touched a little bit upon other channels that we work on, so I will not do more of that here since time is running. But Weibo, Douyin, extremely popular video channel, which cannot be underestimated in China today. Yeah, Baidu Tieba, as I mentioned, also Youku, which is the YouTube lookalike here, Soho, very popular news media, a channel where you can also have your own account. And I think that's it. Yeah. So how to do now? That's of course the key thing. We've rushed through this, could not be in any other way. We have outlined 3 ways that you can proceed, that I can recommend all of them. One is, if you go to our website, there is a form you can fill out about what your interest is, and we will get directly back to you. If you need it to be in German, just write it in the comments field and we will get back to you in German. But anyway, don't hold back. Of course, we would love to hear from you, whether it's just a general interest at this stage or something more specific. The other thing which I ought to say is that, of course, there are also other agencies who do this, and I'm sure do it well. So here you can just see we searched China marketing on Google and got a lot of results. So definitely you can also work with others if you like that. But the only thing I will say is I recommend to work with someone in China. And third, we are actually in Austria to meet with clients in April. So on the 24th of April, we will be in Salzburg, and 25th and 26th in Vienna. So if you're interested in meeting directly to talk more about your situation, you can send us an email or you can sign up on the form I showed you previously. So with that, I will leave the floor back to Lisa and say thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Alexander, for this very interesting and compact overview of the Chinese online marketing channels. We have now actually gathered some questions, and I would also kindly invite Fabian Gems to join us again for our Q&A session. We've gotten a lot of questions actually. I will just pick out, as mentioned before, briefly some, and all the others that were mentioned and we cannot answer now, you will receive an email from us later on with the answer. So what we picked out was quite interesting. I think there was one question actually that concerns WeChat Pay. Is it possible WeChat Pay with an Austrian credit card? Is there a possibility if you have an Austrian credit card to work WeChat Pay?
So I tried to discuss this. Thank you for the question. Very good question. Because of course it influences how you act on the market. You want to be as local as possible, as we heard before from Shanghai Channel, from Alexander. This is actually not an easy yes or no question. For some companies, from some individuals, it works. Officially, it should work that you can open the wallet. You cannot retrieve money from your credit card, but you can receive some money. But over the last 2 months, there were new restrictions from the Chinese government, which makes it now harder for not only our interns, but a lot of expats coming here to open their WeChat Pay accounts with foreign cards. So we are still working on a solution for that, actually. And for the moment, we just have to try it. If not, write us, because we are gathering the information for WeChat Pay to try to find a solution for many, many Austrian companies.
Thank you very much, Fabian, for the answer. And another interesting question that I would like to ask you, Alexander, because it concerns visually appealing stories. So we had one question: are all the tools for creating a visually appealing story in WeChat, or how much you need to work with design outside of the platform? So do you need external consultants, or is all the material there for creating visually appealing stories?
It's not all in WeChat, but it is all freely available. So there are several design programs, you can say, that we use. For example, in our company, we don't pay anything for layouting the stories, but we use something called Shumi, which is a program for this. It has a lot of templates. It's fairly straightforward. I will say, I think it is a little bit like with all layout or all design. So let's take if you work with InDesign or something. If you do it often, it's not complicated at all. But if you don't do it on a pretty much daily basis, it is really hard to make it look good. So the best example I can give is like when you want to make a website, you can use Wix or something like this to make a website. When I try to do this myself, it looks completely hopeless. But when my partner Marek does it, it looks awesome. So I think if you know how to do it, yes, you can do it. If you don't, the tools are freely available, but it's not so much really whether or not, and we'll be happy to share with you if you send information where you can find these tools. Also, I should say that unlike WeChat, which can operate in English, Xiaomi and the others only operate in Chinese. So.
And maybe
Okay.
also for WeChat with the open platform. I mean, there's better versions in English and all that, but still, as Alexander said, it's not that straightforward. So it is good to know Chinese, because you might come to page number 4 and then it's all in Chinese instead of English. So be aware that it's not as straightforward as Alexander also pointed out in the presentation.
I think for many of these things, in my experience, it's not so much a question of whether you can do it in principle as whether it makes any sense to do it. So from our side, we're very happy to share with you all links to all resources if you just send us an email. Most of our clients, or not most, but several of them, they have tried it and done it, and in the end they just came back and said it's just too ridiculous to spend these resources in-house. But it's definitely in principle doable. So if you want, you can give it a try and see if it works for you.
Okay, we have to slowly come to an end, but I think we do have time for maybe one more question, because this seems also interesting. Where can I assess the WeChat data? Like, for example, visits on my WeChat, and how can I analyze this?
Yeah, good question. There is a back end to WeChat. So what you see directly in WeChat is how many views an article has had. Anyone can see that. You can also see how many likes it has, and of course how many questions and so on. But there is a back end. You need to be an administrator to see that. And what we do normally, for example, for our clients, is we just agree with them that every week or every month we send them an update. Actually, we send them a report saying we posted this article, it had this many views and so on. But also we sometimes just take a screenshot and send to them of where are we now. So, but you have to access the back end.
Okay, maybe just one more.
And
sorry.
Just say,
Go ahead.
and in the back end, of course, you can also see where they are from and other characteristics of the followers you have. Yeah.
And because we were touching upon language before, I can see now a question also that's, I think, quite interesting. Is everything in Chinese language on WeChat, or are there also some English articles?
You mean that are posted?
Yeah, I think that's what it means.
Well, you can publish in any language you want, also German, of course, but what you really need to take to heart is something which I think many companies still struggle to do, which is if you want to communicate with Chinese, it's in Chinese. I mean, the number of Chinese who speak and read English good enough to really think that this is just super cool that you write to them in English is not very high. So it's I compare it normally to if I go to a museum in France and I have to read the text there. I took French for many years. I can read it, but it's a strain every time I have to do it. So a lot of Chinese, unless they're really fluent, that's also where you will find them. They can, but in reality they will not.
And I mean, you have to look at your audience, right? As Alexander said, 90% of WeChat users are Chinese, first of all. Second of all, you want to make it as intriguing for them as you can. So, and as easy to digest. What did Alexander say in the webinar before? Would that article be read in the metro in Shanghai with millions of commuters on a Thursday morning? And when you post it in English, I would rather say to a highly degree no.
Okay. Yes, I'm sorry we have to come to an end of this webinar. Thank you very much to both of you, to Fabian. Thank you for joining and being with us. Also, Alexander, thank you very much for your inputs. It's highly valuable. All the questions that we have gotten so far, they're slowly coming in again also. Don't worry, we will answer them in individual emails after the webinar.